Welcome to Gold Shields. Join NYPD veterans Tom Smith and Dan Murphy. With over 50 years of combined experience chasing drug lords, dismantling cartels, and hunting terrorists. Now they pull back the curtain, sharing raw, unfiltered stories from the front lines and the heroes who stood beside them. No topics off limits. This is real. This is true crime. This is Gold Shields.
Welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy, along with my partner in crime, as I always am, Tom Smith. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm not in a secret place like you that we can't talk about, but I'm doing good.
How I
Dealing with
wish
this
I could
cold
share.
still.
How
Jeez.
I wish I could share where I am. I wish. I can't, though.
We can't. We got to eliminate people if you do. We can't do that.
No, we
It's
can't.
a family show. We can't go around, taking people out.
Lives are at stake. Yes, yes.
Before we get going, we'll do our normal, attention to our big, important partner, Cop Line. Cops need to understand that there's people out there to talk to when they're running through a tough time, either at work or at home. Copline.org. Big partners of ours, 1-800-COP-LINE, 1-800-267-5463. Please reach out to them if you need to talk to someone on a professional level or something personal going on at home. It's answered by retired cops, so they know what's going on. Don't forget about Copline, please. And as always, check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/@goldshields, and every possible audio platform you can think of. There's some that we don't even know we're on. We're on every single one. Search it, listen to the show, follow us, subscribe, so you don't miss episodes like this that are so important. And Danny, we have done a couple of shows on this topic, and the topic doesn't go away. It just is out there, and it's an epidemic, and it's something so important that has to be continuously talked about. And when you have heroes like Alina Donahue that are on our show today, telling their story and her story of surviving the trafficking that's going on in this country, and her story is incredible. And I'm so honored. We're so honored to have Elena on Gold Shields today. Elena, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. What a nice intro. I do appreciate that. Thank you, real.
That's what
Well,
we do here.
That's what we do. We love our guests. We want to give them the proper level of respect and accolade, and you deserve that. So, your story is a fascinating story, and what you are dedicating your life to now is, as Tom said before, I consider it a national, if not an international, embarrassment and shame on the human race that we allow this to go on. And you have a story, and Tom and I, sometimes when we have an interview like you, which is rare, there's nobody like you, obviously. We just sit back and we let that person tell her story. And we would be honored if you would do that today, Elena. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm honestly honored to be on Gold Shields, and yeah, it would be a privilege to share my story on your platform and really just not only create awareness but let people in. I feel like the word human trafficking is a big buzzword, right? And then everybody wants to create awareness. And the way I share my story, I want to do more than create awareness. I want people to understand what exactly took place and what happened. Because if they understand, then they really grasp the topic, right? It's much more than awareness. So if okay with you guys, I'll just jump right in.
Please
So
do.
yeah. So it's important to know. So there's a lot of like statistics around human trafficking, like only, people that have been through traumatic incidents are typically victims or have experienced, those who have experienced molestation or some kind of exploitation, some kind of vulnerability. Um, but I tell everyone I had the best childhood growing up. I grew up with both my parents, conservative Catholic home, with my sisters, and I just had the best memories growing up, like on my parents' ranch, and riding horses and just playing outside. And I was your typical kid, right? Growing up, a very happy kid. I still consider myself a happy adult. I'm very bubbly and whatnot. Um,
I didn't
ah,
notice.
No, not at all.
Not at all. You can't tell.
No.
Um,
Mm-mm.
So, had a great upbringing. Pretty, I wouldn't say I was a square or anything, but, pretty, like rule follower, very much respected like adults and my elders and everything. Um, like I said, we grew up in a conservative household and my dad was very strict. So like even if I'm bilingual, so even if I like conjugated something wrong in Spanish, my dad would correct me and be like, "No, this is the right way to say it. You want to do it the right way. Always do it the right way." So I grew up with that mentality, right? Very blessed. So where did everything start for me? So my everybody has a vulnerability, whether they know it or they don't know it. Everyone has a vulnerability, and my vulnerability was the fact that I was very naive and I didn't know. I knew there was bad stuff out in the world, but I didn't know, or I honestly didn't believe that the bad would ever reach me. Um, the biggest mishap with my parents was that they overprotected me too much. There were conversations, but not about like what could possibly be out there in the world that could harm us. Because they just protected us so much. We lived in this perfect bubble. And then on top of that, and I still live in Naples, Florida, which is like a privilege to be here. And people vacation here. They save all year to vacation here. So I just lived in this perfect bubble. I was in college. And I was a sophomore and I was, straight A student. It didn't go out too much, but I tried to have fun and hang out with my friends and everything. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was midterms in November of 2011. And I was a little cocky because I was like, I'm so gonna ace all these tests. Like I'm not even worried about it. I had been studying for like 2 weeks and I was like, I got this. It's not a big deal. So one of my friends was like, "Let's go out and have fun. Like it's college night. You haven't gone out. You've been stuck in your room studying." And I said, "Okay, fine. I'll go out." That was the night that I met my quote unquote trafficker. So one thing to note is a victim or survivor will never really refer to their trafficker as a trafficker. They'll refer to them as their boyfriend or, that was their man or whatever the case may be. So that particular night, I met my trafficker, and I'll refer to him as my trafficker so that people grasp and understand the conversation. But he was nothing of what people depict a trafficker to be. He was outgoing. He was well liked. He was handsome. He was just so kind and generous and all these great accolades, right? Like he was just awesome. I was intrigued because he had this bad boy persona to him, and I was like, how does this guy that has this boy persona to him is so well liked and so well respected and people love him? I was like, and he's interested in me, like that. I was hooked. So we started dating right off the bat. Um, the red flags are there, but of course, I didn't know what those red flags were. One of them were that the relationship escalated really quickly, right? Like we just hit it off and we started dating right away. Um, so a lot of things took place. We started dating right away. Within a month, he was eager about moving in, right? And I was just like, "Oh gosh, like I live at home with my parents. I have no necessity of moving out. Like my life is good." But he was like, "This is what couples do. They move in together. They start their own life. Like you need to do the same." I was 21 at the time. 21. Yeah, I was 21. And he was older than me. He was in his later 20s. And I was just like, I guess I should move out. My parents were completely against it, but that's when I started like butting heads with them. And I'm just like, no, like, you just don't want me to move out. I really want to move out. Like, I really love him. And my dad thought I was nuts. Like, my dad thought I was absolutely nuts. But I did. I kept pushing because my trafficker was like, pushing me. At the time he wasn't my trafficker yet. But he was like, "We need to move in together." And it finally came true. After a couple of weeks, we moved in together. Everything was under my name. He made sure everything was under my name, which was another red flag. And I was just like, "Why is everything under my name?" But of course, I was so like head over heels. I was like, "Who cares?" Um, Within a week of moving in together, I don't know if you all ever heard of a website called Backpage.com. So Backpage.com no longer exists. It was taken down by the government. But in 2011, this website was extremely prevalent. Like it was more used than Craigslist than anything else. Um, and you could find all kinds of ads and everything on Backpage.com. So my trafficker, he like I didn't know what Backpage.com was. And I remember he came up to me, we were in the living room, and he was like, "Oh, there's this modeling ad, you should apply for it. Like, you'd be good." And I laughed. I was like, I had no aspirations of being a model. Like, I was going to school and studying international relations, ironically enough. But I was like, I laughed it up. I was like, I have no aspirations of being a model. Like, thank you, no, thank you. And that was the first time that he flipped the script. That was the first time that I ever saw a violent, aggressive side to him. He literally grabbed the phone and threw it at me. And he's like, "What the F do you mean no? Like, what do you mean you're saying no to me?" He's like, "I haven't asked you for shit. I have." Am I allowed to curse? I'm so sorry.
Fine.
Looking for powerful defense without the mess? Meet Impact, a revolutionary line of chemical irritants designed for law enforcement, military, and personal protection. With no blowback, no cross-contamination, and easy cleanup, Carry Impact delivers unmatched stopping power without the hassle. Whether you're in the field or on the street, safety should never be compromised. Protect yourself with the next generation of defense. Carry Impact, stopping power, redefined.
Patriot is a premium whiskey hard seltzer. We've carefully crafted 4 flavors that not only taste exceptional, but can be enjoyed on any occasion, anytime. We're committed to giving back 5% of all profits to the core groups we call the backbone of America. We are proud to help those who serve our great country. This is America's Seltzer, the brand that stands for quality, community, and the American spirit.
He was like, "I haven't asked you for anything. I've treated you so good. I asked you to do one thing and you're going to say no." And I was shocked. I had never seen this side of him. And it made me think, I'm like, "Oh my God, he's never asked me for anything. He's right. Like, how can I say no to him? He's treated me so nicely. Like and I was like, you're right, you're right, you're right. I'm so sorry." Because I just wanted him to immediately revert back to that sweet guy, right? So I was like, you're right, you're right, you're right. I'm so sorry. I will call the ad and see what this modeling ad is all about. And he started calming down, and he was like, "You see, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to do what you're told." And I was so confused. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? He calls the ad, and some guy picks up. They talk for a few minutes. Then I talk to the guy, and the guy is like, "Yeah, just come for an interview." He tells me the day before the interview that he will let me know the location and the time. And I'm just like, okay. The call ends, and we'll refer to him as Nathan, my trafficker, even though that's not his real name. And Nathan was just like, "See, that wasn't that hard. You got to make daddy happy. It wasn't that hard." And I'm just like, "Daddy? Like, what the fuck?" And I'm just like, "Okay." So he reverts back to being the sweet guy that I'm used to. I get it out of my mind. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go do some kind of, modeling interview that I'm not interested for. I'm sure it won't last that long, and life will go on, right? Because I won't be a pain. The day before the interview, I get a text message, and it tells me the location of where to go to and the time to be there. My trafficker makes it a point the day of the interview arrives, and he's just like, "I'm driving you to the location. You're not driving. I'm going to make sure that I drive you to the location. I don't want you to be late, nothing like that." And I'm like, okay, sketchy, but I'll go with it, whatever. Um, when we arrive to the location, he makes sure to like get me high. He makes sure to get me high. He rolls up a blunt and he smokes it, and then he's just like, "Smoke the whole thing." So when I'm done smoking the whole thing, I am high. I'm just like, "What the fuck?" And he's just like, "You see, this will calm you down. It'll keep you calm." What I had no idea, you guys, was that I was walking into a trap and he was aware of it. I had no idea that I was walking into a trap. So one thing about me is I have a photographic memory. Till this day, I still have a photographic memory. I could see something for a second and recall it to you 10 years later. Like, that's just the way my brain works. I walk into the building. I'm told exactly where to turn right, go down the hall. It's this particular door. There will be a latch on the door and you walk in. I knock on the door because I'm not walking in. And this guy, he's like 6'2", like really tall and big, kind of looks like a biker. And I'm just like, what the fuck? And he's just like, come on in. And I'm like, okay. I walk into the room and he's just like, do you have your driver's license? And I was really scared because this guy looks really scary. But as soon as he asked for my driver's license, I kind of like put my guard down a little bit. I'm like, oh my God, thank you, Jesus. It is an interview. He asked for my driver's license. It's an actual interview. I give him my driver's license. He takes a look at it. He makes some notes, right? He's writing bullshit on a piece of paper. God knows what he's writing. And then he says, all right, I got to see you. I got to see you naked. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is a modeling interview. I'm not going to get naked. And then he raises his tone. And again, I'm 5 foot even. I'm very short. And this guy's like 6'2". And he towers over me and he's like, do you want the fucking job or not? So fight or flight. And I just freeze. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't want to get naked. And he's like, just get naked. There's a bunch of other girls. You're wasting my fucking time. So I panic, I get scared, I freeze, and I undress myself, and I just awkwardly stand there. He looks me up and down, and he's just like, all right, you're gonna work. As soon as I go to grab my clothes, and I'm just like, I'm getting the fuck out of here, he's like, lay down on the bed. And I'm like, what? And he's like, lay down on the fucking bed. So I go into detail about this scene because it's important for people, especially women, to know that when something like this is taking place, rape doesn't always look like in the movies or how it's portrayed in the movies. Rape can sometimes be silent. Rape can sometimes be a woman trying to, or a male, whatever. But typically, it could be a woman just trying to talk her way out of it. It's not always kicking and screaming and yelling for help or trying to reach for the phone and call 911. Rape looks different for everyone. And it took me a long time to realize that because I felt guilty that I didn't fight back. So I lay down on the bed and I'm trying to create chatter, right? I'm trying to distract him. I'm just like, maybe if I talk to him, he'll get annoyed and he'll tell me to get the fuck out. That doesn't take place. He tells me to shut the fuck up and then he goes ahead and rapes me. When he's done, he looks at me and he's just like, you're going to work perfectly fine. And then he goes, if you call the police and you leave this place or you gotta go to the authorities or anything, he's like, I already have a copy of your license plate. I took a picture of it. He's like, I will kill you and I will go to your family and I will kill them. So a lot of people may say, well, he's bluffing, whatever. He just finished raping me. I took him very seriously, or how they say in New York, I took him dead ass, right? I very much took him seriously. Okay. So he leaves the room and I'm there by myself. I grab my clothes, I get dressed, and I just haul ass out of there. I get out of there. I go to the car where my boyfriend Trafficker is, where my boyfriend is, and he's just like, how did it go? I stay quiet. I don't know what just took place. I just stay quiet. And he's just like, did you sleep with him or not? And I'm just like, how did he know what took place? And he's just like, if you slept with him, then it's cheating. But if you understand that this is work related, then it's not cheating. Again, my mind is fucking blown. I'm just like, what is happening? I was sexually assaulted. Now the guy that I love is telling me all this stuff. I don't want him to think I'm a cheater. And I'm just like, no, it wasn't cheating. And he's like, good. You start working on Monday, like he said. So he was in on it the whole time, the entire time. Monday comes around and my boyfriend makes sure he takes me every day to the location where I'm supposed to be going. So I'm trafficked by the guy that raped me for 2 weeks. After the 2 weeks, my boyfriend takes over and he's like, now you work for me. Now you're going to work for me. Because some kind of deal went wrong between the two of them. He was pissed and my boyfriend's like, now you're going to work for me. So he takes me and he starts trafficking me from Naples, Fort Myers, Tampa, Orlando, back to Naples. Not really Miami. There's too much competition, too many girls working in Miami. But it was always Naples, Fort Myers, Tampa, Orlando, and then back. So within that circuit. So I was trafficked between January 2012 through August of 2012. Those 8 months were too long, right? People will ask, where were your parents? You're so close to your parents. Where were your parents? first, there is a language barrier, right? So I was able to tell my mom and my dad whatever I wanted them to believe, right? And I also grew up babysitting, right, for very affluent families. So it wasn't out of the norm that I was out of town babysitting. So I would use that excuse constantly. And then I was in college, but I dropped out. And I remember telling my parents, I just need a semester off. Like, I'm making such good money, babysitting for this family. Cause I would babysit for like lawyers and attorneys and doctors and everything. And they take you with them, right? And I would just come up with these bullshit excuses. One thing that my boyfriend, my trafficker, knew was that I was very close to my family. Till this day, I still call my mom every night to say goodnight. I'm 34 years old, right? I still call my mom to say goodnight. And it didn't matter what was going on. If, a client was, or a John was coming or a trick or anything like that, everything stopped at 9 o'clock. And I had to call my mom to continue that routine so that nothing, even though things were like out of the norm, they weren't too out of the norm. So the language barrier helped. And my boyfriend or trafficker was able to control the situation and use it to his benefit. Um, did I ever go to the police? No, I couldn't get out of his sight ever, ever. Those 8 months, I could never leave his sight. There was one time that I tried to get away, and I think I was like 6 months in, and I had just had enough. I couldn't do it anymore, right? And I said, "Fuck it." Like, I knew he was gonna do some coke and knock me out, right? And I was just like, "I'm gonna get out of here." We were in some hotel. This hotel had, I don't even know how many freaking locks on the door. It had like 3 locks on the door, and of course, he locks everything before he would go to bed. But he was knocked out on coke and everything, and I was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna make a run for it. I'm gonna leave." So I get up because he would sleep with his arm around my waist so that if I moved, he would feel it. But he was really knocked out. So I move his arm, from my waist, and I like tiptoe to the door. I get up and I tiptoe to the door. By the time I got to the 3rd lock, he woke up. And I just remember he jumped up and he yelled, "Where the fuck are you going?" And he grabbed me. At the time, I had really long hair. And he grabbed me by the hair and just flung me into the bed. And when he flung me into the bed, he started choking me. And he was just like, "Do you not fucking get it? You're not fucking going anywhere." He's like, "You're not leaving my sight. You are my moneymaker. You're not fucking leaving." Then I got an ass beating for that, and I never tried to get away again. So at that point, I was just like compliant, and I was just like, "Fuck it." Within those 8 months of being trafficked, I teach about it now, but I fell into a life of crime, right? So in legal terms, it's forced criminality. That's really what it is. But I fell into a life of crime. So I was given ultimatums, and my trafficker would be like, "Okay, you can go and see 8 to 10 tricks today or however many tricks, and you can make my quota, you can make me my money. Or I stole these credit cards, you can go to the store, use these stolen credit cards and just buy me things of value, whether it be an iPhone, an iPad," and he would sell it in the streets. I always chose the life of crime. Anything to get me out of sleeping with God knows who. Because you never know who's on the other side knocking. You just never know, right? But it was all bullshit because at the end of the day, when I was done committing crimes, he would still make me work for him. So it was just all bullshit. How did my trafficking come to an end at the end of the 8 months? It came to an end with law enforcement, to be honest with you. Because I got caught up in this life of crime, law enforcement was focused on getting him, a known gang member. He was a known gang member. He was already, a sexual offender. He had those charges. He had been to prison, I don't know how many times. So because I was committing these crimes, with him, the cops were like, we're gonna get them off the streets, and we're gonna get them for these crimes. So I'll never forget it. We were on the news. We were wanted for, some kind of scam, rental fraud scam. And we were on the news. We were wanted, and we just ran out of money. We ran out of places to go. I remember we hid at his mom's house the night before, and he actually made me sleep under the bed, like as punishment and like to hide me. He made me sleep under the bed. So like for that entire night, I think I was wearing like a mini skirt, a tank top, and I was freezing, but I couldn't leave under the bed. I was just like, "Oh my God, is this what it feels like for a kidnap victim? Like this is awful." Um, the day comes and he's just like, our little, our little like charade or journey has come to an end. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "You don't know it." He's like, "But there, when you walk out of this house, there's gonna be a bunch of DTACs, like undercovers, like outside waiting for us, and they're gonna take us down, and we're gonna go to jail." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, it's all over." He's like, "But this is what you're gonna do. This is what you're gonna say. You're gonna hold me down, and you're gonna take the charges for me. And because you've never been in trouble, you'll get out." Like he knew exactly what to say. He ran through the whole thing, and exactly how he said is exactly how it played out. And I just remember walking out, and it was kind of like slow motion because as I envision it, I'm walking down these stairs at this apartment complex, and there's like 10 to 15 DTECs, like undercover cars. All these guys are out, like in their vests, like all these undercover cops, and I'm just like, I had this big smile on my face, and they were like, "This isn't funny." Like the gang unit was there, and I'm just like, I couldn't get the smile off my face, and they thought I was a smart ass. Like, they thought I was just, like, a smart ass, like, trying to hold her man down, and they had no idea how relieved I felt. No idea, you guys. Like, I remember they were cursing me out. They were like, "Oh, you think this is a joke?" And I just I just couldn't take the smile off my face. And, they, like, arrested me, and I didn't say a word, I just kept smiling, but I'm also taking it all in because I remember looking to my right, and then there was a school bus picking kids up, and then I was just like, "It's over." Like, this bubble that I've been stuck in, they popped it. It's over. Um, and that was the second time I had been arrested with him, but this time it all came to an end. Where they fucked up was they wanted, like, more evidence on us, so once they put me in the squad car, they put him right next to me in the squad car. So my smile went away, and I was like, "Dumbasses, why would you put him in the same squad car as me?" Like, I'm over here feeling alleviated, and then they put, this guy who has ruined my life, like, in the same squad car because they want more evidence. Um, but whatever, we ride, we go to booking, and I don't get out for a year. I do a year in jail. I never went to prison. I do a year in jail. And again, he has a lot of connections as as a well-known criminal. He had a lot of connections, so he was just like, "I'll make sure to get a hold of you." And I was just like, "Oh, what the." And he did. Whenever he needed to get me a message, that message would be delivered some way, somehow. Whenever he needed to tell me something, whenever he needed to keep tabs on me, see what my behavior was like in jail, he knew everything. Everything. Like, he just knew everything. So it was like, it was hard because even though I was away from him and I was in jail, I wasn't really away from him because he still kept his tentacles on me. Um, I get out of jail and I remember my dad was like, I'll never forget what he said to me. And he was just like, "If you ever go back to him," no one ever knew I was trafficked. I didn't say a word. I didn't tell my parents. What I told my parents was that I fucked up by dating a piece of shit. That's it. And they went with it. Again, language barriers. They didn't look at the charges were all like ID theft, credit card theft, nothing with prostitution, nothing with trafficking, nothing. I kept my mouth shut. I never told a soul. So I was just like, "I'm sorry, I messed up. I dated a piece of crap, and that's it. I had to go to jail." So I got out of jail, and I remember my dad was just like, "If you ever go back to him, I will never speak to you again." And I just remember that broke me because even though I got caught up in this horrific world of trafficking, my parents were still my everything. I just never said a word of what happened to me because I didn't want to bring shame to the family. Again, both my parents are Cuban, and you're raised in a way where, culturally bringing shame to your family is a big no-no. You can't do that. And I just never told my parents what I went through, and I just remember when my dad said that to me, I was just like, "There's no way that I'll ever go back. There's just no way. Like, I refuse to break my word." And when he got sent up the road, he got sent to prison, and when he got out of prison, his first stop was my house. And I remember I was shitting bricks. I was so scared. I'm like, he's here. And I remember my dad was home, and I was like, he's here. And I opened the door and I was like, you can't be here. Like, you can't look for me. You can't, nothing. Like, we're done. Like, it's done. And I remember my dad, he's in heaven now, but my dad, very pro Second Amendment, he pulled out one of his rifles and he pointed it at him and he was like, if you ever fucking come to my house, he's like, I will blow your brains out. He's like, try me. And he left. And my dad, many feared my dad. My dad was a gangster. Like, so I would not put it past him. He would have died happily in prison. Like, he would have done his time, but he never looked for me or showed up at my house again. Like, he would randomly see me in public, but like he never approached me ever again. And that was kind of like where that whole charade with him ended. Um, but then I'm like, okay, I got out of jail, finished probation, but now I'm a convicted felon, right? I'm like, I got 9 felonies, no misdemeanors, all felonies. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get my own place. No, as soon as you admit and tell people I'm a felon, please, like, give me a chance. Everyone's like, get out of here. No, thank you. We talk about like giving, people a second chance, and no one gave me a second chance, and it was really, really hard. So I just needed a point. I was like, all right, I'm gonna bust my ass. I'm gonna start from the bottom and work my way up, and just hope for the best. But I I truly believed in my core that those charges would go away. I just didn't know how. And when I would tell people that, people would laugh at me and people would be like, you don't understand how convictions work. They're forever. They don't go away. Like, I feel bad for you. You're delusional. But I just kept with it. I was like, nope, nope. These charges are going to wait. Just wait, and they're going to go away. Wait and see. A few years go down the road, and now I got out of jail in 2013. Now it's 2017, right? And I meet my mentor and friend, Linda Oberhaus. Very well respected. She's just like a force to be reckoned with. And mind you, all these years pass and no one knows that I've been trafficked. No one knows what I went through. And I meet her, and something in me says, share your story with her. So I do. We meet for coffee, and I'm just like, let me tell you a crazy story that you're probably going to think is crazy. And she's just like, okay. And I tell her my story, and she's just like, do you realize you're a survivor of human trafficking? And I was like, nice try. No, I'm not. I'm not even a victim, but thank you very much. The conversation turns into another thing, and she truly brings it to my attention. Years down, right? Oh, like 4 or 5 years down the road, she brings it to my attention that I was a victim of human trafficking. My mind is blown because not once did I ever compare my story to being trafficked. Like nothing. I just thought I was in a really messed up relationship. One thing leads to another. I start going to therapy. I start understanding what I went through. I start working through like nightmares and everything. And one day she goes, did you know there's a Florida statute that can help you with expunging your like charges? And even though I've been preaching for years to people that I was going to get my charges expunged, I was just like, oh, okay, that's sweet, but that's not going to happen. Like, I'm not in the moment. I couldn't grasp it. One thing leads to another. We hire an attorney. We go to court. I fight it, and I win. Those 9 charges go away. They go away. They no longer exist. They are shredded. They are sent all the way up to like DC, whatever. And those charges they no longer exist. And I know that because I just recently did like the global entry background, and I was just like, hey, I have all these charges, and they were just like, nothing comes on your record. And I was like, that's good. That's really good. And yeah.
Well, let me, I mean, we could literally end this show right now, and it would be a public service announcement to what's going on in the world. Without any questions, without any back and forth, your story is insane. I mean, it's a movie, unfortunately. It's a movie. And then the part of surviving. And the one thing that popped into my mind that I want to ask you was the only thing keeping you sane, all right? Because you have to have a mental breakdown at some point. Was the only thing keeping you somewhat grounded was those phone calls to your mom every night?
I truly think so. I truly believe so because I was holding on to something, whether it was hope or hoping to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But I really think her phone calls and hearing her voice and hearing my dad in the background is what really just kept me sane. Because things could have gone completely wrong. Completely wrong. I could have died, I could have overdosed, I could have been beaten so badly that they found out what was going on with me. Like, so many things could have gone wrong, and I really do believe that my phone calls with my mom, even though they would last, like, 1 or 2 minutes, that's it. Like, to me, that was everything because it was my escape for that 1 to 2 minutes. That's it.
When it comes to the safety of law enforcement, first responders, and military personnel, every moment counts, especially in the dark. Streamlight provides the reliable, high-performance lighting solutions that these heroes trust in the most dangerous situations, whether it's a car stop, navigating dark alleyways, or exploring abandoned buildings. With Streamlight by their side, our heroes can tackle challenges with confidence, knowing they have the power of advanced lighting technology to guide them. From the first responders on the front lines to the law enforcement officers ensuring our safety, Streamlight is there to make every mission a little easier and much safer. Join us in supporting those who protect us. Visit streamlight.com to discover how you can be part of the team keeping our heroes safe. Because when they shine, we all shine.
Have you ever wished you could go back in time and see the events that shape the true crime cases that fascinate you? With newspapers.com, it's like having a time machine to the past. Dive into more than 1 billion newspaper pages from 1690 to 2025 and relive the headlines that shocked entire towns. Explore newspapers from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond with a simple search. Read the breaking news as it happened, crime scene reports, witness testimonies, and courtroom drama. Explore forgotten clues and see how the media shaped the narrative of infamous cases. But it's not just the major stories. Newspapers.com lets you dig into local mysteries, missing persons reports, and the small-town scandals that history forgot. It's the closest you can get to being there when it all unfolded. So, if you're ready to dig deeper into the crimes that keep you up at night, start your journey today at newspapers.com. Use the code GOLDSHIELDS for an exclusive 20% discount on your subscription.
So during the course of this whole, I hate to say the word experience, but during the course of this whole crazy episode in your life, did you have any thoughts on how it would end? Did you, I mean, you're going through it day after day and it finally comes to the point where police intervention makes it end, but did you have any thoughts on, I know you said you couldn't escape and that he was just too everywhere, too omnipresent in your life. He wasn't going to let that happen. You were his moneymaker. I mean, how, not knowing when even if you get a cold, in a couple of days, you'll be okay. Right? You can be miserable with a fever or something. I know it'll go away. But do you have any thoughts in your head as to what was going to make this stop?
I had no thoughts. I thought it was never gonna stop. I lived, how some people plan their day and live day to day, they don't wanna stress out or they struggle with whatever. I lived minute to minute. That's it. I lived minute to minute, at most hour to hour. I didn't know what to expect because he was also very he was all over the place. He was all over the place. And when I say I lived minute to minute, I truly mean that. And just to put it into perspective, if I was hungry and he would say, "Yes, you can eat." And we would go, whether it be to McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, some fast food, right? And I would finally sit down and I'd take a bite out of my food, whether the burger or the sandwich or whatever. He'd look at me, and as I'm enjoying my food, he'd be like, "We gotta go. We gotta go. You're taking too fucking long. We gotta go." And that was it. That was it. I couldn't take my food. He'd grab it, he'd throw it away, and he'd be like, "Let's fucking go." I lived minute to minute because I didn't know what to expect. Completely did not know what to expect.
That that's terrifying. I mean, even not living it, not me living it, hearing that is terrifying. Think about how long a day is when you do that. Uh, Looking at it on a law enforcement side, like me and Dan are, what what eventually happens to him? Not that I give a damn, but just part of the story. Like, what happens to him? Do you find out if anything happens to him later on?
Yeah, so that's kind of what transpired everything. So he ended up overdosing on drugs. I think it was like cocaine or whatever. At this point of my life, I remember getting a phone call and it was just like, "Did you hear he died?" And I'm just like, "What?" And like my girlfriend's telling me, "Yeah, he died from an overdose. Can you believe it?" Because again, no one knew what I went through with him. I was just like known as his girl. Like I was his girl. In the streets, I was his girl. He was a gang member. So that's just how I was known and whatnot. And as I'm being told that he died, I felt like I went into like the twilight zone and I was just like, it's over. It's it's finally over because even though I got away from him and I'm trying to rebuild my life, I'm still looking over my shoulder. I'm still looking over my shoulder, not knowing when he's gonna randomly show up at a grocery store or whatnot, because that's how he did it. To keep you on edge, to keep you on your toes, to remind you that he's in charge. So when I knew he died, I was like, "When's his funeral?" And they were like, "Oh, it's on this date." And I'm like, "Perfect, I'm going." I went. I went to his funeral and I sat in the back and I needed to make sure that he was in that fucking casket. And I did. I walked up, saw him in his casket, and I'm like, now I can move on. And that's exactly, I was like, now I can move on because that piece of shit's in a casket.
You know, this whole concept of grooming that is becoming more, people are becoming more aware of it. Your story is powerful because it is not what people probably stereotypically think of human trafficking. We have, as a society, have become accustomed to the term human trafficking and for the sex trade. Okay, we get it. And we tend to think of people from other countries illegally brought here, shoved into a pipeline of sex workers by these nameless, faceless, international criminal organization people. And yet here you have a local guy, well known, well liked, good looking, charming in many ways. You were dating him, you had no idea. And all of a sudden it happens. And it can happen that quickly. The grooming process, the things you said, the terms he used, all of a sudden, like a light switched. So this is a great lesson for people here to understand. If you're young, be careful. If you have children, help them understand how quickly this can happen. And I know that that's a big part of your life right now, isn't it? Making sure people understand this.
It really is. Just because we talk about the phrase, it can happen to anyone, but I feel like people take that for granted because they're always going to think it can happen to anyone, but not me or not my children. And it's just like, I thought I'd never encounter anything bad, like nothing bad. And as it was transpiring and as it was happening, I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't catching those red flags. It can happen. Grooming is one of those things. When you think of grooming, some people think of, oh, they're going to coerce you, right? Because human trafficking is force, fraud, or coercion. They're going to coerce you. They're going to force you. And it's like, grooming is done in such a way that you won't notice it. Grooming is done with affection. Grooming is done with attention to detail. Grooming is done in a way that the victim doesn't even know she's being groomed. Her boundaries are being pushed and she has no idea. She has no idea because grooming is done I don't want to say ever that it's done ever so eloquently, but it really is. It really is. And when you have somebody who's a master manipulator, right? Because traffickers are very into themselves, they're master manipulators. When you have somebody like that, that knows what to say, that knows how to fill the gap and fill that void, whatever void you are missing, you won't notice you're being groomed, right? So it just, we can't take certain words for granted because I feel like we do, but it's just like grooming happens in a way that you won't notice it. So it's important to have these conversations. That way, if it is happening, you could say, wait a minute, I wouldn't do this. Like this is so out of the norm for me that I wouldn't do something like that, or I wouldn't allow myself to get to this point.
Yep, and I was just gonna say that. I think a lot of times with the red flags that you mentioned and other conversations we've had with survivors, Lisa Phillips a couple weeks ago, a lot of victims go, "Well, I'm smarter than that. I would know it. If something bad was going on with me, I would know the signs." But you're so encapsulated in that just dark world that it keeps bouncing off you. Of what now you look back, Elena, in your story, and how obvious those signs were because it's in the past. But people going through it, and I'm sure you say this, but I would love to, get your point of this of people who even think they're in that world to take a second and take a step back and go, hold on a minute. What is this? And it's scary as hell because like you said, look at you. It happens in a blink and it's happening all over the place every day.
It really is. If anyone were to listen to this, right? And I'm sure that they will. But like what I would yeah, what I would say is like take a step back. Would you ever, especially with the sexual boundaries, right? Because they'll normalize it. They'll push your sexual boundaries, but then they'll normalize it. Take a step back. If he loves you, does he really want you sleeping with other men? Countless men, and then encouraging it and telling you this is what true love is? That's not what true love is. If he really loves you, would he be forcing you to do certain sexual acts, right? It's just like all these boundaries that are being pushed, whether they're sexual or not. It's like I can tell you that the majority of the women that are currently being trafficked or have been trafficked would have never in their right state of mind prior to being groomed allowed themselves to get to a certain point. Never, because it was never in their interest or in their mind to begin with. It was never their MO. It was never something that they did even envision doing, right? Somebody who loves you is not going to force you to do anything you feel uncomfortable with. And then on top of that, somebody who truly loves you and cares for you will never like tell you to do something because it'll make them happy and it's the right thing to do in a relationship. There's just so many things that I wish people would just take a step back and be like, wait a minute, this isn't me. This isn't something I do on, at all. Right. But it's justified. The traffickers will justify it, which I think is why when you do encounter victims that are in that fight or flight survivor mode, they're just like, oh no, that I'm holding him down. Like this is what I do. Like this is my man and I'm making him happy and this is what he wants. And it's just like, okay, I hear a lot of he. I don't hear a lot of I, you know?
So thank you for sharing that um, deeply personal story that you share so freely because you have such a good heart and you want other people to know the story and how it can happen to anybody. And that's people like you do need, not people like you, I don't mean that in a negative way,
No,
people who've
no, you're
had your
good.
experiences, who've had your horror, who've lived through this kind of stuff need to share the story so that people can learn. And you're such a good advocate for that. Tell us about the kind of work that you're doing now to get the word out about this and to stop this. And it's very important work. Please let our audience know what you're involved in.
Yeah. So I train law enforcement for as a career. I absolutely love it. I'm so passionate about it. And I just feel like, okay. they can either learn whatever is given to them in a textbook or whatever instructor is voluntold or told to teach them. But it's just like they're not really learning like the skills that they need or the information or having the knowledge. So I train law enforcement, and I'm actually in the process of completing what I hope becomes the best training out there within the United States. But I train law enforcement. Not only do I share my story, but I truly depict everything. Like, okay, if you really want to learn about trafficking and how to identify it, how to interdict it, how to do everything, you have to understand trafficking. And I'm not talking about understanding trafficking on a level of like reading textbooks or like vocabulary. No, you need to just like law enforcement that does things with drug interdiction. If you're going to learn something, you need to have that hands-on experience. You need to have that street knowledge. You need to understand it. You need to know what it means, not only to you as a law enforcement officer, but you need to know what it means to the trafficker, what it means to the victim, what it means to the John. You need to know everything there is about trafficking if you truly want to not only do your job, as a law enforcement officer and help people, but understand it and grasp it. So that's really what I do. I'm so passionate about it. And another reason I got into this is because my goal is to bridge the gap between law enforcement officer and victim. There is such a huge disparity. There's such a huge gap. Victims are not pro law enforcement. At one point, I was that one victim, right? But it's just like, wait a minute. If there wasn't this gap, like if there wasn't this like fake ideology, between victim and human trafficking and law enforcement, excuse me, I really do think we can make so much segue. We can make so much change. So I'm passionate about what I do, training law enforcement. I do it on a local, state, and federal level. I absolutely love it, and yeah, it's honestly one of the greatest honors of my life to be able to stand in front of law enforcement, and I do it in such a way that when I present, like, no one knows that I'm a survivor unless they've looked me up, of course, and then when I hit them with like, "All right, well, I am a survivor, let's continue class," like, I'll hit them randomly when they least expect it because I feel like, 1, it's fun to do. But it's like, when I give it to them, they're just like,
Shock value.
huge shock value. All of a sudden, people have more questions, because I've attended so many conferences and trainings, and when they have that shock value, all of a sudden, they're much more invested than they were at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I just love what I do. I'm so passionate about it. I'm very fortunate.
So where can everyone get you? What's your website? How do they get you? What's that all? Your world of getting in touch with Elena
Oh my
Donahue.
god, getting in touch with me. So, like, coming into my world. So, I would say definitely LinkedIn. I have such a wonderful and huge following on LinkedIn. And like, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Alina Donahue. I will share stories. I will connect. I will answer questions on LinkedIn. I just love that platform. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, contact me for a training, for their agency or anything, they can go to alinadonahue.com and contact me via there. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just a regular person. I have this big story, and I share it and everything. But at the end of the day, I'm just a regular person that went through some horrific stuff, overcame it, and now I just want to let others know that they too can overcome it and that they too can do their job in a way that's never been done before. So,
You are a very special person, and
oh,
it's such an honor to have heard your story from you. Thank you so much. And um, I think the work that you do will help law enforcement understand. Tom and I, when we were working, if we saw a prostitute, an escort on the street or something like that, we would think to ourselves, well, they're out there committing a crime. It's a low level crime, but they're a criminal. They're a prostitute. And in reality, there's a pimp behind that person. There's somebody who has groomed them, manipulated them, put them out there, is making money off them, and they're a victim. They need to be looked at as victims. So rather than scoop up the street prostitutes and say, well, we made 8 arrests tonight for the numbers game, look to get what's really going on. Look to the heart of what's really going on is what you're saying. And it's fascinating. And law enforcement, I'm sure, has changed its view in many ways, but it needs to continue to change its view because people like yourself, you were not a criminal. You were lured into this world and then held there as a hostage. And so I applaud the work that you're doing. I think it's wonderful. I think you're the perfect person to do it because you have such a great personality and such an ease with which you tell your story that I'm sure our audience is going to love this show, and it's impactful to anyone who hears it. So thank you for sharing it.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, we search for these guests with no personalities and no stories, and this, and I am kidding, obviously. This was hopefully an eye opener for a lot of people because the direction it could have went in. You could have been done and over years ago and out of the picture and out of this world, and you didn't. And you survived it. And now, even more importantly, putting it out there to educate others, other victims, law enforcement, which I think is so vitally important. And that's coming from two guys who spent 50 years in law enforcement. And to get this kind of training that only you can provide, only you, not a book, not a video, nothing, is so important to the law enforcement community with maybe getting ahead of this. I think is such a great thing that you're doing, and you're an inspiration, a hero, a survivor, and people need to look you up. All right. AlenaDonahue.com, LinkedIn, get in touch with her, get her to your police departments and get the training that's necessary to get ahead of this horrible epidemic that we're in this country with trafficking. So, Elena, thank you so very much for being here and telling this story.
Oh my God, it's been an honor. Thank you both so much. And I hope I did Gold Shields justice.
Oh,
Oh,
you nailed it, kid.
yeah, you did a
You're
great
great.
job. You're an excellent communicator with an amazing story. So thank you. You honored us.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Tom, no, our pleasure. Tom, take us away as you always do, so eloquently at the end of every show.
Well, this is the special time of show that we say a prayer for our law enforcement officers and keep them in your thoughts with your prayers because it's a hard job. Both the law enforcement community and the military vets, they volunteer their time and their efforts and their blood and their sweat to do what they're doing. So please say hi to them in a store, pat them on the back, say thank you. And as we always do with shows, keep victims and victims' families in your prayers as well. There's too many out there. We got to cut that number down. But for the meantime, keep them prayers going for them that they get out of that life and they get saved and they can go on like Alina Donahue did. So keep them all in your prayers, please. As always, like I said in the beginning of the show, youtube.com/@goldshields. All our audio channels, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, blah, blah, blah. I don't mean to go over it, but there's so many and we're so proud of that. So keep that going and visit us on our website, thegoldshieldShow.com. Give us a comment, leave us an email, what you're looking for, maybe a suggestion to a show. We're always into that. So as always, my partner, Dan Murphy, Alina Donahue, who was absolutely incredible today. Thank you again. This is Tom Smith for Gold Shields. Everyone stay safe. We'll see everybody soon.